Hey, Christie, who's our guest today?
Hey, Jeff. I am so excited today. I have my longtime friend, Joe Schum, and we're going to talk about cheerleaders and connectors.
So this is all about creating a fertile ground for people to want to give you a hug. Then the rest is up to you.
And it's really focused on the small business, the service small business leader, and how do you build that referral network. So I'm super excited because Joe knows all about this topic, and he just kind of happens to be one of my favorite people anyway.
Awesome. Well, let's get rocking. Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it the why and the buy.
All right. And we're back with the Why and the Buy podcast. How are you, Christie?
I'm doing great today. How are you, Jeff?
I can't wait to get started because we're going to talk about networking. We've never talked about networking before, right?
We have talked about networking, but we're going to take a slightly different spin on it this time. So, we've talked about networking for individuals when we had Chi-Chi Okizi come on and talk about her approach for simple networking. And we've covered the topic of networking as it relates to traditional sales people and the things that you spend your time on. But we're going to really focus in on those service-based business owners today. I love this topic, Jeff, because this is what you and I do. We are service-based business owners. We are coaches, we are trainers, we are speakers, we are authors. And so it really does make a difference if you're selling yourself as the product. And as you also know, when you're chief cook and bottle washer, it is a tough thing to take your focus away from doing the business and focus on getting the business. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. And I want to welcome my friend and yours, Joe Schum. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
I am great. And what an awesome welcoming. I feel like there should be a whole show just about me now.
There should have been confetti bombs or something going on, right?
Don't you want to just take her with you everywhere you go?
Oh, my goodness. I'm on a hanger from my rearview mirror. She's such a cute little cheerleader.
That's it. Just play me in your ear on the podcast all the time.
And look for Christie Walters' hang from your mirror promotional items for the Buy and the Buy podcast coming soon to an e-store near you. Thanks for being here, Joe.
Sure, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. And it is great to get a chance to speak about some things close to my heart. And so I appreciate being here.
So, Joe, you and I know each other. We've known each other for a very long time, many years now. But to tell our audience a little bit about your background, what you do, maybe plug your podcast here for us a little bit on the Why and the Buy.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So thanks. I've spent over 30 years in sales and marketing, predominantly sales to start, and almost all of it in the tech industry. So my foray into service-based businesses has only been in the last maybe 6 or 8 years. I sort of made a bridge from tech into service when I was in technology in the event management space. And so there you got to see the experiential marketing and the sort of service to clientele face-to-face, up close and personal, with a technology backbone. And from there, it was a series of business partnerships, and where I am right now at a small boutique investment management firm here in Atlanta that got me more and more into what it's like to market and sell and develop business for the service industry, the small firm, boutique firm service industry. Just to take the shameless plug, we do produce a podcast every other week called IRC Wealthcast. It is original, and we have guests like yourself and other subject matter experts and trusted advisors. So come on out and visit us and subscribe to us on iTunes and tell us how we do.
I love it. That's awesome. Yes. Reviews, by the way, for those who are listening, are gold for podcasters. So whether it's IRC Wealthcast or the Why and the Buy, go out, review early and often.
Sometimes it's the only way we know, or it's the only way that the podcast networks know if people like it. I mean, it's one thing to download it, but it's another thing to just go and like it. So it's just a quick thing, just, 5 stars. That's only 5 stars,
it's
right?
Only five stars. I mean, come on.
Just click the button. It's just as hard to give us 5 stars as it is to give us 1. So you might as well give us 5, right? That's my little shameless plug there too. But Joe, when it comes to networking and it's interesting, you find that a lot of people, especially business owners, a lot of people get into owning their own businesses, whether it's on the side, it's a side hustle, or if it's just their main thing and they're going to be entrepreneurs, but they're not comfortable selling. And we've had a lot of guests on to talk about that, but specifically, you see a lot of people join these networking groups, right? Whether it's BNI or otherwise, and it seems like, I know how. If I just get people to send me business, if I get people to like me and they like other people, they will just send that business to me, and I'll never have to sell because a referral is so much easier to close than going out there and doing it myself. But it's still hard to ask for referrals, and there's still a sales process involved with earning those referrals. In your experience, what's the best way to approach that?
Patience, in my opinion, is the best way. I think that we in the small firm space, as Christie had mentioned earlier, are doing a lot of things. If you have firms 4, 5, 8, 10, 12 people, everybody's wearing lots of hats, and they're focused parochially on what it is they do. They're doing their technician piece, right? And the other pieces, like you mentioned, sales, for some reason is avoided, but is necessary for survival. And I think that when they do start to immerse themselves in building out networks and what I call channels for building referrals, they want it to happen yesterday. They expect one lunch, and how come I'm not getting anything? And, or I built a website. How come I don't have 400,000 people hitting it? And it's just patience. I always like to liken it to a chart. I call it the hockey stick on its back. It's real flat, and then all of a sudden it hits the blade and starts to take off. But that takes time. And so patience is my big thing there.
So when's it going to happen, Joe? I want to know when it's going to happen. Tell me right now when it's going to happen. How long do I have to wait?
I've never heard that before. So, if I look at one channel that we work on, and we work on 3, we work on our current client base and what we call our recently acquired clients as part of that. That's one channel. We have our trusted advisor network as a second channel delivery system for referrals, and the third one being the web, the social media web. And I say it's about 12 to 18 months of hard work and focus and consistency, so you start to see things come in on a fairly regular basis. And even after all that, depending on the occupation that you're grooming for some sort of relationship with each other, some of those occupations only produce 2 to 3 good referrals a year. So, there you get to see how big your bullseye needs to be.
I love that word consistency, right? I have seen so many small businesses struggle with the idea of staying consistent. They will work. And right before they hit their watershed moment, they just say, it's just not working for me. I'm just going to walk away. And it's that persistence. If you are committed to your business model, if you believe this is where you need to be, that consistency is the only thing you have to do all the time, even if it's mediocre. You've got to do it.
Yeah, it's true. It does eventually show up for you, and it can be whatever you want it to be. If it's about being active in social media, you have to have a Marcom calendar, and people are going to get used to seeing your releases, whatever the frequency is. If it's once a month, once a quarter, once a week, once a day, they're expecting the Why and the Buy. They're expecting IRC Wealth. They're expecting you, even you personally, your personal brand, to be out there. And if it's a networking event, you got to show. You can't say, I belong to XXX group, and you go to one lunch a quarter or one lunch every 6 months, and then you can't figure out why no one even remembers who you are. that's why I think that, you kiss some frogs out there, you try to find where you best fit. But once you determine what that is, narrow your focus and help each other. And that's really where it's at. You can't go out, in my opinion, you can't expect to have 50 of the same person that you can meet, and all of them are going to refer to you. And then you've got 50 things to give out to each one of them, right? That's also unrealistic. So once you find your target, then you got to narrow down to the bullseye. Who are those people that most make sense for you, your culture, your people, things like that, that resonate with you, because your clients are going to become part of this family, and you want them to feel the same way about these folks as you do.
Right. So let's talk about kissing frogs, because I know you and I've had this conversation a couple of times when it comes to networking events and where to spend your time. And in the very beginning, I'll tell you from my personal experience, the very beginning of my business, and Joe, you were on the other side of the table at lunch with me a couple of times when I was struggling with, where do I spend my time? I feel like I'm spending money. Time is money. So there I'm getting a double hit, right? And I'm not sure how to vet out these associations or these events. How did you go through this process?
That is really a great question, because it is a little bit simple and archaic in its sense, right? You almost just have to get out there and skin your knees a little bit. And what I mean by that is, at the very beginning, I was going to just about any group that I got invited to, any sort of association that seemed remotely to make sense against the firm that, I work with. And from there, I set a goal. I think that it's key that whatever you do, you go in and you have a call to action for yourself when you enter that room or that event, right? What am I going to accomplish when I come into this thing? Is it I'm going to meet just one good person, that I can have a conversation with for more than 3 minutes and get their card with an agreement to have a coffee later, or go to their office and see how they are and how they live from a business and personal perspective? Or it could be just something along the lines of, I hope to, become a sponsor, if this makes sense. I'm going to talk to the sponsor committee, or I'm going to talk to the membership committee about getting involved. Let's see what kind of culture resides here. And then once I find those are the ones I stick with, Christie. I don't really spend a lot of time searching for more. I'll take one here and there if my schedule allows, but generally you start to get a feel for which ones structurally make sense for you, right? I have pet peeves for ones that if they're built anything like this particular model, I don't go to anymore. I just don't see the value. And there are other ones that wow me, right? And I'm like, oh, that's a cool one. I want to get in on that. And so that's generally how I look at it, from just a pure experiential event kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the concept of goal setting, that you've got to have a goal for this meeting. And being a small business owner myself, you find yourself in a network with a bunch of other small business owners, and I got to go network. Okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna go. And they show up and are like, okay, I'm here. And when you say it like that, it's like, of course, you're not just going to walk into a place and then the business is going to find you. But at the same time, if you're not trained to realize anything otherwise, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed. And maybe it's, I'm going to find 3 qualified prospects here today. Maybe it's, I'm going to talk to 3 people that I've never talked to without throwing up, right? I mean, everybody's got their own place on the timeline that they need to start. And I think, I don't mean for this to be remedial for a sales podcast, but for a lot of the people that are listening to us, they're in very new businesses. They've got a great idea, they've got a passion, but when you find out, or what you find out when you start a small business, is that there's so much more to running a small business than that thing you're really good at or very, very passionate about. And so there is some remedial nature to some of the things that we need to talk about, because sometimes you just need to prove to yourself that you can do it and not die, right? And then you can go back and say, okay, I've been spared, right? What am I going to do the next time? That wasn't so bad. How do I build on that? But you cannot build on anything if you don't realize what you're building from and what you want to eventually get to. And that comes down to these sometimes really short-term, really simple goals.
It does, and I agree with you. We sometimes forget about these sort of baseline foundational things because we're doing everything else. I submit too, though, know yourself. Know yourself and what works for you. Like, what do you like? I like intimate conversations with one person. Well, then don't go to a room with 400 people in it, right? And then listen to them for the icebreaker. Say, how many people's birthday can you find in 12 minutes, right? And you got to run around the room like you're at Six Flags, And so, if it's coffees, if it's be original. If it's a walk in the park or a ride, I don't know what it is, but you find out what works for you, what you're comfortable with, and look for those opportunities to put yourself into, because you'll be at your best then.
So, Joe, do you ever find that your networks get stagnant? They work for you in the beginning, but maybe they aren't working for you so much now?
Yeah, and I think that's, I like to, for this year, what I've done is I've made a personal sort of goal to take inventory of my networks about once a quarter and look to where maybe, I like to think that it always takes two to make something go stagnant. So, I think that the challenge here is that whatever channel you build, if it's the channel where you have the relationship you have looking from your client base for referrals or from your trusted advisors for referrals or even the web for referrals, what have you stopped doing? What have you become stagnant in that your audience is no longer appreciating? Just as much as it may be, that person hasn't really come to bat for me. I have never gotten a referral for them. Okay, what was that? Maybe that's not how they're built. When we're looking for somebody to connect to, I look for certain attributes. It's not just that, that they have a great firm or a great business. It's not that they're well known. Like if I do something with them, if I have them on the podcast or I ask them to write a blog or I go to an event and they're there and they can help introduce me to somebody else, these to me are of value, right? But I want them to propagate my message out and I'll do the same for them, right? But one-way streets don't work. But I think sometimes it's up to us to really examine what we're doing in terms of stagnation.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think that happens, Jeff, earlier you mentioned the fact that, sometimes the concept of networking sounds a little bit remedial for a sales podcast. I think sometimes the more experience you have, especially if you've been with the same organization or you've been working the same group of clients for a long time, you can find that level of stagnation even in yourself. You're not making you're not taking that initiative anymore. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, that's just where I go every Thursday morning. What? and that's the thing. It's, look, you get a lot of credit for just showing up every week, and I don't want to contradict myself, but we do have to pay some attention to what you're doing when you show up every week. It is enough to get you to a point, but if we're talking about growing beyond that point, Joe, to your point, what are you trying to do? What are your goals? What are you trying to build on? What do you know about yourself? Not only your own personal styles, but what do you need out of this? And it's easy to get stagnant. It's easy to kind of fall into your rut or into your path, and you just kind of, okay, well, I'm here. Well, I'm not going to lose anything. I'm just going to keep showing up so that I make sure I see these people so I don't lose anything. Okay, great. Well, then what are you going to do to grow your business? Because that particular activity, that event that happens every Thursday morning, it's no good for you anymore. It's not bad for you. You're using it to maintain, but as far as growth, you're really not getting anything from it. And I've seen people drop those before. Well, this was a really good group and it's not anymore. Well, good on them for noticing that and recognizing that and then doing something about it. But so many of these things, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this too, Joe, is networking is more than going to your weekly group. Networking is everything you're doing outside. And networking is going to those new customers and saying, how are things? It's been a couple of months. Have we delivered? Have we over-delivered? If you say that we haven't over-delivered, then I'm doing something wrong. Let's have a conversation about that. And then, sometimes it's just as simple as saying, who else can I dazzle today?
Yeah, yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit then, because I'm glad you went in this direction, especially for the small professional firm. Any of them would ask you, no matter if they're old storied firms that have been around a long time, or they're brand new, fresh, breaking out from some big corporate entity into a young firm, they'll say referrals are the gold, right? It's generally how they survive and how they grow. And so in my opinion, the place where it's best to start is with your client base. Who are the ones that are within the client base that are your best cheerleaders? I mean, take inventory of your clients and find out what it is that who those ones are. Some of them are going to be evident, right? They've given you referrals in the past. Go find them, survey them. Why do you do business with me? What is it that attracted you to me? What do you think about how we're doing now? I mean, we're in the process right now of instituting a combination automated marketing and experiential marketing client care program that we're inserting in 2017. We've been rolling it out slowly. It does two things. It helps us with our current client base to not only find out what it is that makes them stay with us, but also to educate them and give them permission to say it's okay to refer to me. Some people you sometimes have to walk people to it and say, please refer to me. And then for the newer customers, the idea of there's a lot of really cool stuff out right now about the first 100 days of a new client, and how do you create such an amazing experience for them so that the first thing they want to do is tell everybody what a great decision they made. And so those are some of the things I think that are easily rectified. And with process and technology advancements today, you can make these things happen for a small firm that doesn't have a lot of people around them, and it becomes quite efficient for you and proficient for you.
Well, I mean, giving people the forum, and social media provides for that, and there are so many channels too. I mean, when you not only giving yourself or giving your clients permission to say nice things about you, but giving them a place to do so. I've worked with a lot of smaller businesses that so we have a website. Well, we don't have a comment section because, those are hard to moderate. They're hard to manage. We got to wait for our web developer to do something with that. So you can start a Facebook business page in 5 minutes and give your business a place where your biggest fans, your customers, can go and rave about you. The referral. I mean, a referral in writing, or now you take a 5-second video from your smartphone that you carry around with you in your pocket. You can post that there, and you can get these testimonials and these evergreen kind of referrals that are so easy for people to post. I don't want to stray too far from the topic here, but when in those comments, if it's a great thing, then you can promote that, and you've got all these people saying great things about you. And if it's not a great thing, then you've got an opportunity to respond publicly to a setback, which also tells a lot of people about how you run your business. So that kind of feedback mechanism is really necessary, and it's there for you to take advantage of. But I mean, it's really interesting that you say that, though. I mean, to kind of circle back. Yeah, sometimes our own biggest cheerleaders don't know that they can cheer.
Yeah, it's true. Clients, we try to do a couple of client events every year that are very intimate and very experiential. This is not stuff that's webinar based or automated or, big room stuff. This is for certain clients that we believe are involved in a particular persona that we market to.
Like guys that like to go to the Masters? Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, these events are intimate, and they encourage people to get excited about hanging out in the community, and they get to meet other people that also made a similar decision to do business with you. All of a sudden, Joe looks over at Christie in the same room and says, "Hey, nice to meet you. You're a kind of cool lady. What's going on? How did you end up in this room like I did?" And, people want to hang out with people that they like and know, and also made good decisions or decisions like them. And so these are simple things that we can do. The other thing I was going to say is that we refer to this whole thing that we're talking about as business development, which is the bridge for us between the marketing and the sales. So while we all hear as professional salespeople in the room that, oh, you're always selling. Yeah, but this was really important for us in terms of how we dealt in small firm culture, because you're right, sales gets really a bad rap sometimes as sort of an acidic word. And what we're saying here is this is that delivers to the top of the funnel. Then a whole nother process takes off once the referral gets in your house. And that to us is the sales process. So this is all about creating a fertile ground for people to want to give you a hug. Then the rest is up to you.
So what do you think are some good ground rules, principles, if you will, for experiential events? I mean, if you're working for a firm in the financial services industry, depending on the size of that firm, I mean, and all things being relative, some of the larger firms specifically can afford more extravagant events. Now, maybe those events will attract a different kind of clientele because it's such a cool opportunity. On the other hand, there might be some smaller businesses that still want to create an experience, but maybe don't have the capital or the budget to do that. Do you have any kind of rules of thumb that really aren't tied necessarily to the type of the event, but are just kind of things that could be considered by a business of any size?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, I guess the first rule is don't be afraid to make a mistake. You know, if you have a budget and you stick to it and you're creative, let your creativity flourish, right? And don't take it personally if it tanks a little bit. Right. I mean, that's the first, I guess that would be the overarching thing here is don't be bashful. If you're going to do something, jump in with both hands and feet. And then I would think that know your audience. You know, we've taken inventory of our client base and we've decided who it was we want to talk to within our client base. And so we've, created different ways to look at our community, our client community. And so we pick out things maybe that aren't too grandiose. And you're right, big firms can do these cool things. They can bring in Chuck Berry, RIP, and, and he can play guitar while someone else does hand signs and someone else juggles. And you're like, wow, this is the greatest event I ever had. And that thing costs $25,000 at an open bar. But you can accomplish some really cool things for some very small amounts of money if you just think through what it is your audience would appreciate. And when you have that event, don't make it about you. Make it about them. And that is what we really find to be the most critical and the most fun for us, because we get to learn about our clients when we're asking them to have fun, right? This is for you, not for me. We can get to me later, right? We already know you know me, So those would probably be the axioms I'd follow.
I like it.
That's
what do you think,
awesome.
Christie?
I love it. So I want to like read off the little gems that I have written down today, and these are in no particular order. So you must always have a goal. And it's interesting how when you think about networking, how this really is just a manuscript for life, right? You've always got to have a goal, have consistent and persistent action, be original, review regularly. Don't forget about the people you know right now. Be bold, and it's not about you. Is that not like a commentary on life in general, right? I mean, how cool is that?
This podcast is a wrap. We've got nothing more to say.
I love it. That is, I was just kind of making these little notes, and as I started going back through them, I'm going, this is awesome.
This could be for a dating site for all we know.
Good. Well, there you go.
Right.
So,
right.
Joe, tell us, do you have a favorite sales book?
A favorite sales book? Boy, that's a tough one. I have a sales book that I refer to quite a bit in the last few years. So I guess it would be my favorite from a periodic standpoint. There's been a lot of great ones. It's by a guy named Craig Elias called Shift Selling. I really like that because it talks more about you and how you win, not always analyze. We tend to analyze loss, right? We hate loss more than winning as human beings. And so we tend to always like, how did that one get away? Quick, everybody get in a room and beat each other up. And we'll figure out we'll never do that again. And it's all negative, negative, negative. And what I always liked about Craig was that he focuses on how did you win that one and how do you repeat it? And so I like that overarching thing.
Excellent. Are you reading anything right now?
I'm reading two things right now, one for business and one for pleasure. The business one is from a woman by the name of Dr. Judith Glazer, and it's called Conversational IQ. And I'm reading it in conjunction with a online class I'm taking with her right now. And she's sort of a neuroscience of conversation person and a psychologist and a well-known coach and quite a talented lady. And so that's that one. And the other one, to be really pretentious, is Albert Camus' L'Étranger, and I'm reading it in French because I'm taking French. So
that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So
and you have been for some time, right?
Yeah. I'm entering my third year, I think now. So yeah. So yeah, it's now that's a very simple book that any French person would say, oh my God, that's like a primer. But for me, it's like a novel. It's really more of a short story, but it'll take me a while to read it. So,
all right, I'll bite. Why are you learning French?
So I wanted to do two things. I've heard that doing something complex is important for keeping Alzheimer's away from your door as you near your retirement years. And things like language is very good for your mind and for your mental capacity and faculty. The other thing was I wanted to learn a second language before I die. And I didn't want to be the typical American that really figures everyone else should speak to him. And so I just gravitated towards French because I'd taken it before in high school, and I really liked the French culture. But, the idea that I wanted to be bilingual so I could put it on LinkedIn or something. I don't know,
It's all about social media in the end, right? Yeah. The only phrase I remember in French is "Je voudrais un autre verre de vin, s'il vous plaît." Give me another glass of wine, please.
Yeah. I would like another glass of wine, please.
I would like another glass of wine, please. Yes, exactly.
That's fun. Well, Joe, let me ask you then what we ask all of our guests here on the Why and the Buy. And what is your why? You can take this in any direction you want, but why do you do what you do?
Yeah, so it's a great question. For me, it's evolved over time. I think like anybody, right? I think that's fair. What we thought we were going to be and what we eventually figure out what we are. And for me, it's about the connection. And as I've evolved through life and career, I've really learned more about me. And, as you get older, you drop some of the things you think everybody else needs from you to make you successful, and you become more and more authentic. And so as that has grown for me, the why has been about connection, connecting me to other people, but connecting other people to each other. And that to me is a really exciting thing, because why we are here on this planet is really up to us. And so it's really cool when various people are put together and they also do well. And so I think that's my why, with a little bit of what. So, yeah.
I love it. And it's okay when those get integrated together. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. What do we always say, Jeff?
Oh, well, we always say that when you know your whys, your hows and your whats get much better. So it's important to have that connection between your why and your what. And you even said that your why is connection. So now we've got a connection between the why and the what as it relates to connection. And you're here to talk about networking. It just seems to fit, Joe.
Plus, I like the way you guys use why, because you use why in the sense of how we are being, as opposed to why can be reflected on as the kind of question that makes you defend. It can be a defensive question, right? To prove something. And in this case, the way you use why is really much more creative. So, yeah.
Philosophy that. Tuesday with Joe Schum. We appreciate that.
Joe's little gems. Add that to the list, Christie.
There you go. Joe's little gems.
I am going to do that. Joe's little gems.
Hashtag Joe's Little Gems.
That's gonna be in social media.
Yes, and Joe, you can start that on your own Twitter handle. You can say Joe's Little Gems. And just when these things pop through your head, because I know that you're spending time, you're reading in French, for crying out loud. Just don't tweet in French. I won't be able to read what you're saying.
Right. I promise to hold back on that. I'll promise. Yep.
Awesome.
Excellent. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been fabulous. I really appreciate it. And I know that our listeners are going to get a lot out of this. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, how could they reach you?
You can catch me a couple of ways. You can catch me through my IRC Wealth handle at joe@ircwealth.com. I'm also on ircwealth.com in the blogs and podcasts. I am on Twitter at says Joe Schum. And also, I am a new and up-and-coming, soon-to-be certified success coach. And you can catch me at jrshum09@gmail.com. Stop by and say hello. Check us out.
Yes, I love it. And the podcast is IRC Wealthcast. Highly recommend you go and check that out. And you can we'll have a link to that in the show notes, and obviously how to get a hold of Joe as well. With that, Jeff, anything to wrap up?
Well, I think that we have got to tease next week a little bit. Kristen Zhivago is going to be with us.
Yes.
And I'm excited to meet her and speak with her. And I also just want to tell everybody we've got an event coming up. I've got an event coming up. I'm going to play entirely too much golf in one day, all for a great cause. Links are in the bottom, but the name of the organization is called Chosen Vision, and they do an amazing job serving adults with developmental disabilities and giving them a place and a way to live more of a normal life. Take a look in the show notes. Please donate if you can. Right now, I am giving away, as part of the donation drive, a 45-minute consultation with me. Make a $100 donation to the cause through my page at chosenvision.org, and we'll do a video consultation, a phone consultation, face-to-face if you're in the Metro Detroit area. I want to know how I can help you with your business if you're willing to help this organization.
I love it. And how many holes of golf are you going to play?
So we're going to play at least 100 holes of golf in the day. I have not played less than 100 in any of the 3 years I've been involved so far, and it's a great day for a great cause, and we have a ton of fun.
Man, I love golf. I don't know that I love 100 holes of golf.
You can do this. You can do this. So anyway, Christie, it's a great cause, and I hope anybody listening is willing and able to support it if you can. I know you get asked for a lot. I know that you get asked to support a lot of causes, and you can't support them all, so I certainly understand, but I would be remiss to not ask for your help with this. So
absolutely, and we'll include that in the show notes so that anyone can go straight off from the show notes to the donation page.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's something else that if you're interested to talk about offline later, Jeff, is we are involved with a somewhat similar group here in Atlanta called the Kyle Peace Foundation. And it's two brothers, one who has a severe form of dystrophy and his older brother, and they're the ones who run marathons and Ironmans together. They've created a foundation here in Atlanta, based out of Atlanta. My boss is now the chairman of that board. And they bring athletes from all over the nation in to run marquee events. Like we just did the Publix Marathon. We had 60 athletes and their families and all these other athletes pushing them through the half marathon. We do the Marine Corps. They do certain Ironman and smaller triathlons. And I'm wondering if, when I listen to your mission, that maybe a connection to their mission, that part of leading an active, fulfilled life might be about an athletic event. And there may be some connection there between the two organizations, because they're always reaching out to try and find people who want to experience what it's like to be in an endurance event, even though they're limited physically. How do they get that done? So it's pretty amazing stuff. So anyway, if it comes up, if you think about it and rattle around a little bit, and if you want to connect the two groups, I'd be happy to do that.
Look at Joe. All he does is come on and provide value. Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you for being with us. Christie, thank you for being with me. Thanks for carrying me half the time.
I don't think that's necessarily true.
Awesome. Well, let's get together and do it next week then.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thanks,
folks.
guys.
Hey, thanks for listening to us on the Why and the Buy podcast. If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at the Why and the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you next week.
So alone at night, crowds won't do it.
How about the music on this podcast? We call them our house band, they call themselves Haskins, and they're based out of Plymouth, Michigan. If you want to hear more from them, go to haskinsmusic.com and check them out.